Hi guys, I have got a hella action-packed weekend ahead of me here aboard good old Athena. There is going to be a little something for everyone in this video. A bit of demolition, a bit of laying up new laminate, a bit of painting, some sanding. This is going to be a lot of fun. Come Sunday, all of the teak here in the cockpit is going to be gone, and the holes left over from these old instrument doohickeys are going to be glassed over. I've also got a bunch of exciting looking packages for us to take a look at, if there's time. But first, let's get this peel ply off the forward support for the diesel tank. It looks like I did a pretty shitty job of wetting out the laminate on the vertical surfaces here. Fortunately, for this part, it does not matter. I spent about an hour trimming the overhang and sanding the support just to make sure that there are no sharp edges I can cut my fingers on in case I need to reach in underneath the tank. And that means the engine compartment is ready for primer, except there is one little thing I want to fix first. Limber holes seems to be a reoccurring theme here aboard Athena, or the lack of them, or in this case the super janky aftermarket attempt at making some limber holes. The three holes you just saw are located right here forward in the engine compartment. If I want to fix that, now is my chance. I've enlarged the two holes next to the center hole by quite a bit. I've done that to get into healthy wood, but there is healthy wood in there, and I'm really excited about that because that makes me think there's hope for the structural members underneath the cabin sole. This center hole is going to get a fiberglass tube epoxied into it, something like that. And the other ones here are just going to get filled with thickened epoxy. While poking around down here, I noticed that this sounded kind of hollow. And also it's delaminated over here. So I wonder what kind of exciting adventures are hiding underneath this. Okay, so good news for those of you who like hearing me swear in Danish, because I think you guys are going to be in for a video at some point of me digging out super yucky foam from the bilge, and that's bound to involve just a tiny bit of swearing. For anybody about to comment saying, but that's just a tiny piece, nope. That false bottom is also here, and I'm guessing it's also down here in the bilge. So yeah, that should be a fun project. This too shall pass. Thankfully, it doesn't interfere with my plan of sealing up this hole here, so let's go ahead and do that. Here I've got a little bit of thickened epoxy with 406 and some chopped up fiberglass in it, so I'm just going to squirt that into the two holes. And then there's just a matter of the little tube here. And there it is, all nice and relatively cleaned up. The little bit of excess tube here, that's easy to cut off tomorrow once the epoxy has cured. And just like that, tomorrow is today. Quick little side note, I posted a couple of photos on Facebook and Instagram and all the other places yesterday of the discovery of that foam, and I got a couple of pretty rude comments. One of the comments I deleted and banned the user because it was just ridiculous. The other one, the user decided to shove off on his own accord, so that was kind of nice. He will of course be sorely missed. But just in case it's not completely painfully obvious to everyone, let me just point out that I'm not losing any sleep over that foam I found down there. More than likely it's gonna be an easy fix, but we won't know until I dig into it. But truth be told, I am kind of glad I found it now. At least that way, that area can dry out over the summer. I am under a little bit of time pressure this morning because in about 30 minutes or so, the boat next to Athena here in the yard is going to have their hull sandblasted in preparation of applying cover coat, and that is going to be very noisy. And that puts a very effective end to me yammering on, at least for a few hours. But while that is going on, I figured I could just time-lapse the removal of some of the teak here in the cockpit. As you can see, there's not a lot of teak left here, and what's here is not in great shape, so it makes a lot of sense to get rid of all of this before I start painting. Well, progress is being made. It's taken almost the entire day, but all that's left now is this little piece right here. Just as with the teak up on deck, this stuff is bedded with some kind of adhesive, maybe some kind of resin, I don't know. It's very glossy, it's very hard and brittle, but it also has a very good bond to some of the gel coat. And as you can see, I have pulled up a lot of the gel coat. This piece used to be right here. You can see that piece of gel coat matches up. And there are a lot of loose fibers here, but that's no big deal. I can easily stabilize this, fair the surface, and paint. Let's take care of this last little piece here. And that was it. Well, kind of. There is some teak here that's stuck, like really stuck to the gel coat. I'm not going to be able to get this off without peeling off the gel coat. So I think the best way of dealing with this is with Mr. Angle Grinder. But before I start swinging around that guy, I better take care of all the little screws. That is one down, a few hundred to go. A lot of the screws I will be able to remove with a screwdriver, but all the ones where the head is snapped off, well, that's gonna have to be the slightly slower way. To be completely honest, I am running out of steam for today, but before I head home, let's just go ahead and use this area here as a little test piece so that I can see what I'm in for tomorrow. I think we can all agree that this doesn't exactly look great right now, but at least getting rid of the teak and that adhesive is manageable with the angle grinder. So now I just have to repeat the process I used there for the rest of the cockpit. No doubt that is going to be a hoot and a half, but like I said, that will have to wait until tomorrow. I'm just gonna tidy up here in the cockpit, but I will spare you guys that excitement. Good morning, guys. I've been at it a few hours, and the good news is I'm almost done removing all of the intact screws. It turned out it wasn't that difficult. It's just a matter of tapping out the adhesive and then backing them out. And that means I am now stuck with all the stubborn ones, and that is going to be very time consuming. Most of the screws where the heads are snapped off aren't bad, but some of them are snapped off right at the surface, and that means I can't get at them. But for now, I think I'm just gonna let Mr. Angle Grinder deal with those. Ta-da! Teak, be gone! And it wasn't actually that bad. I mean, sure, it was dusty, but it wasn't that bad. In case anybody is in the market for some Insta teak deck, just add 2 cups of water and 3 eggs and you've got a wonderful teak deck. Well, I've got a great deal for you. I am pretty sure nobody's gonna take me up on that offer, so I better get rid of that dust. In case you're wondering why I'm using this old vacuum again, it's because I've lent my Spiffy 150 Turbo and the vacuum to my neighbors here in the yard. For what I'm doing this weekend, I can easily make do with this guy, so yeah, let's forge ahead. There are still some areas where I need to do more sanding to get down to healthy laminate. Considering I'm already covered in fiberglass dust, let's go ahead and do that. That is the bulk of the sanding taken care of. Let's just take a short break from that itchy fiberglass. And that was officially the last piece of teak that was attached to the boat. Okay, so it's quite clear now that this part here with the hatch in it, that was made in a separate mold from the deck and then later secured with some screws and some caulking. Let's take a look down below. This is where the hatch goes, and as you can see, there might be room for a little bit of improvement in here. Well, that's pretty neat. I see daylight there, so no wonder the plywood that's here is rotten. I'll certainly have to come up with some sort of fix for that. There is a little bit of a silver lining here, because this plywood here is not a part of the core in the cockpit. So the support for the hatch here, that's a separate piece, and the propane locker over there is also a separate piece. When I removed this bit here, there was a little bit of damage to the propane locker, but that should be easily fixed. And something that's a bit odd is, why would they mount this in this orientation? Why not like this? Because if it had been mounted like this, then you'd be able to access the bolts inside that secure the hinges without removing this instrument doohickey here. So it looks like this is secured in the exact same way, and I'm guessing there is some plywood down below here in not so great shape. Yep, that looks like some pretty tired plywood. Now, if they turned the hatch the other way around, the bolts for the hinges would be here where they're accessible. Instead, right now, they're on the other side of this thing, which you can't really get to. I've got a decision to make here. Do I keep this propane locker, or do I tear it out and build a new one? To be honest, I don't really know, but I need to make up my mind pretty soon. No matter what I decide to do, I want to remove this at least temporarily so that I can clean up all of this caulk here, because if I want to keep this, I'm going to glass it in place rather than rely on this caulk. Well, I have certainly succeeded in creating a giant hole in my cockpit. I haven't fully made up my mind yet, but I can feel myself wanting to glass over that hole from the propane locker. Not being able to access the area behind that is just, it doesn't feel great. Well, that was easy. This looks a little bit crusty, but it does feel at least kind of solid. But at least it looks like the rest of this bulkhead is in good shape, which seems pretty dang amazing considering the fact that the top of the bulkhead is exposed up here right next to all of these screw holes. So yeah, I guess you gotta count your blessings. This is the shape I'm gonna leave Athena in for now. Tonight I'm gonna figure out what to do with the instrument doodads as well as the propane locker. Good morning, guys. It is the next day. I spent much of last night mulling over the situation here in the cockpit, and I've come to a conclusion. I've decided to go ahead and glass over all 3 of these holes. As for the propane locker, well, it seems like it's kind of the wrong size for the propane bottles we've got here in Denmark, at least. I don't know about the rest of the world, but I would like to get rid of it. It's blocking access to the area of the hull behind here, and also the construction of this seems kind of wonky. So I'm going to glass over this, and once the propane locker is out of here, there's no reason to have this opening here. I'll have plenty of access, and this I can access from the aft cabin, so none of these are really needed anymore. In response to my last video, I got a lot of comments suggesting that I might need the storage in those 2 instrument doodads, and that makes sense, but there's actually awesome storage right here in the fiberglass dodger that's going to attach to the boat here. Of course, it's not there right now, so you guys can't see it. This is a pretty sizable hole, and of course you're going to be walking on this, so I need some kind of core in there to give this some rigidity, and that is going to be plywood. I'm going to start by glassing over this hole because this gives me excellent access to the back of this. It looks like if I start out with a piece that is 46 by 46, then we can just trim it from there. Something like this. Now all that's required is a little bit of trimming. Let's see how this fits. Yep, I am gonna go ahead and call that close enough for government work. Once I put this in place, there are some edges I'm no longer going to be able to access, so let's go ahead and get this coated in some epoxy so that I don't end up with plywood like this in a few years. Actually, before I start gooping this up in epoxy, there's one little thing I want to take care of. That was the bottom edge I rounded over, so now it should be a little bit easier for me to lay up glass here. The edges I'm concerned about are primarily the edges that get smushed up against the bottom of the cockpit, because I won't be able to access those once this is in place, and I want to make sure that they're sealed up. If I was putting that piece of plywood somewhere where I would expect there to be water, I'd be applying a lot more layers. But for that location, I'd say a couple of layers is fine. Now, let's go make an even bigger hole in the cockpit. Yep, I would say that qualifies as a big-ass hole. Now I get to snuggle up with Mr. Angle Grinder and prep the surfaces down here. I don't know if you guys can tell by the change in lighting, but it's getting late in the day. I've spent the last couple of hours tidying up down here and just preparing everything. I even got started sanding the inside of the hull. I figured access is never going to be this good again, and I am going to paint that at some point, so why not? I'm just going to give everything one last quick wipe down, and then we can mix up some epoxy. As you guys can hopefully see by the sheen on this thing, I've built up a bit of thickness of epoxy. That's about 3 thick layers, and that should be plenty. This should still be nice and tacky. Yes, this is the perfect time to get that glued in place. I've got plenty of thickened epoxy on the plywood, and I've filled up this little groove here, and I've wetted out the other surfaces so that I'm sure to get a good bond. I want to tap that piece of plywood to the surrounding structures, but I'm having flashbacks to last summer's big blob of thickened epoxy in the eye. So I'm going to cheat a little bit and wet out the laminate here and then apply that to the plywood and the surrounding structures. That way, hopefully, I won't get any epoxy in my eye. Ta-da! Complete with peel ply and all. So now it's just a matter of grabbing this and going out into the cockpit. Sadly, I can't really show you this while I'm doing it, but I'll show you the finished result. Hopefully I don't have too many air bubbles trapped in there, but we'll find out tomorrow. The very last thing I did last night before leaving the boat was to back out the screws I was using to secure the piece of plywood. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at that laminate. I'd say that looks perfectly okay. A little bit of sanding and she'll be ready for paint. And the edge over here looks okay too, so that piece of plywood should be on there for good. Just for fun, let's check to see how strong this is. Yep, I'd say that's pretty strong. The next step is going to be to bevel the edges of the fiberglass here so that the new laminate I'm going to lay up on top of this will have something to tie into. But before I do that, there is something I need to figure out. When sanding the cockpit, I noticed a lot of cracks in the gel coat, and I figured, oh well, that's just the gel coat, that's not a problem. But they actually extend into the laminate. I have no idea what happened here, and I'm assuming there is a solid piece of plywood inside of this, so why these cracks would form, I don't know. The starboard side seems to be a little worse. As you can see, there are lots and lots of those little cracks. If you look at the cracks in relation to the position of the screw holes, it looks like they line up with the teak deck, so yeah, that's odd. I still haven't fully decided on what I want to do with the cockpit, if I want to put down teak or just paint it. But if I choose to just paint it, I don't want those cracks to become an issue in the future. I don't want to create more work for myself than I absolutely have to. I'm pretty pressed for time this summer already, so now would be a good time to reach out to someone more experienced. And I think in my case that is going to be Andy from Boatworks today. He helped me out with a lot of advice last year when I did the core replacement in the deck, and I'm hoping he's up for that this year too. I'll just grab this. I was hoping I could show you guys those 3 holes all glassed over in the end of this video, but until I've figured out what to do with the deck and the cockpit, I think it makes a lot of sense to just hold off. That, however, does not mean we can't end this video on a high note. Ta-da! Yeah, baby, I'm back. If you're having flashbacks to last summer, that makes a lot of sense because this is the very same shed. I spent so much time in here last summer that it feels kind of like getting back to your childhood home. And yeah, this is gonna be awesome. When the yard pulled Athena out of here last fall, things didn't really go according to plan. And as a result of that, I think I'm in for a little bit of prep work. I want to get my hands on one of those vibrating thingies so that this is as compacted as it can be. And then I want to put down some sheets to help distribute the load a little bit. Not the most interesting work for sure, but it is a small price to pay considering the fact that I'm in here basically free of charge. The owner of the shed is a really awesome guy. Now, before I move in here, I want to take care of as much of the dusty stuff as I can outside. That includes taking a gel plane to the hull on the areas that need that, and possibly whatever is going to happen up in the cockpit. Long story short, I'm not going to move into the shed right away, but as soon as I've gotten all of the super dusty stuff out of the way and I'm ready to start fairing the sides of the cabin top, then I'm going to move into the shed. I think this video is already pretty long, so I'm gonna end it here, and then I'm gonna spend the rest of today digging into that stupid foam I found earlier, and that's gonna be the beginning of next weekend's video. The reason I want to deal with that now is because ever since I've exposed that yuckiness down there, the boat reeks. So yeah, I want to get that out of there. But yeah, I hope I'll see you guys next weekend. So as always, feel free to leave a comment down below, and don't forget, if you've enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like. See you!